We wanted to talk about, about Proud of Oldham and Saddleworth, the party, the independent party, and why we're independent. And also, we're going to lead on from Roger's story there about the misogyny and how we as a party, and certainly me as an individual, have been subject to a lot of misogyny over the last probably 18 months since we set up Proud of Oldham and Saddleworth. We have had, very kind of sadly, we've had 3 potential candidates who wanted to stand for us. And we had 3, but the 4th one is Debbie. Yep. We had 3 potential candidates who wanted to stand but didn't really get off the mark at all because they were threatened, they were dominated, and they were scared to stand for us.
And these were women. These were women.
All women. All women. All women. Of course, our very own Debbie was the 4th. She was, we all know what happened with her. She had to move out. She had to move out of Oldham because of what was going on, because of her voice. And it's almost as if women are not allowed a strong voice. And the only women that are allowed a strong voice, who are in as candidates, are certainly led by the gentlemen. So, there's a lot of misogyny out there. There's a lot of people stopping women standing up and having a voice.
And this goes back in this town. This goes back to, and I pick on him not because I want to. I just expect better of my MPs, and this goes back to Jim McMahon and his repeated photo ops and events where he turns up exclusively with Asian men. And what that shows in the communities where I grew up is that Asian women have no place in a democratic process, which ultimately leads to the complete disenfranchisement of women in the communities where I come from, to the point where their ballot votes are picked up by the husbands or the sons and traded as postal votes.
One of the ladies that approached me, Raji, directly was an Asian lady from Coldest, and her children were threatened, her husband was threatened. She said that people threatened her for a polling card, and she was willing to videotape them on our behalf, carrying out threatening people for polling cards. And I told her not to. I said, I don't want you putting yourself in danger for potential attacks, but I appreciate your support. And she was frightened. And we did want her as a candidate. And this pattern has repeated itself with other candidates, female candidates primarily, where we've now had a total of 4 female candidates, including Debbie, pull out because of fear and intimidation. And they call us when Sean goes on about bullying and online abuse, if you remember, in the not too distant past, Roger, there was a fake Sean Fielding Twitter account that pretty much most of the Labour candidates and Labour councillors were following, where that tweet account were referring to Councillor Brian Orbin as a CUNT, also referring to Luke Lancaster replacing his surname with a W. These same people have referred to us using an acronym for feces, excrement, shit, using expressions of porn, porno, constipated. It's never stopped.
Abuse in general towards us, and is ridiculous. I mean, when we started up the party, we want to be this clean, this party for the people, and that's what we are, and that's what we portray. We don't we do point out the failings of the Oldham Council as it is. We try not to get involved in, the circus of politics, people slagging us off and slating us, over and over and again. We try not to respond to that. We see it all the time. We see a lot of, the Labour Party old faithful supporters who try and engage us with comments, and we get that all the time. We're not interested, and our candidates, we all get together and we all have a chat, and it's we're trying to get them through that. It's the people of the community that matter, not the politics. The abuse you can throw, that's fine. It doesn't mean that we're going to stop supporting the community.
And have at any point the Oldham Times has promoted Sean Fielding and now his girlfriend, repeatedly. At any point has the Oldham Times approached you?
No.
At any point has the Oldham Times or the Oldham Chronicle or the MEN come to you and said, what about the abuse you're getting, Paul? Because I've seen the document you put out. I read it and I smiled, Paul. I think it was on a Friday night I saw it. It was longer than anything I post, Paul, and that's the first reason I smiled. And it was, it was at least as well put together, with everything was referenced here, point, reference here, because they repeatedly say, oh, you've got no evidence, you're just making this up. And every time, everything we do, we evidence everything we do, Paul. And I saw your post and you went through it meticulously. And it's outrageous, Paul. What you demonstrated was just scandalous.
Well, one of the things that I'd like to point out and to say to all the viewers, that if there were any person in Proud of Oldham and Saddleworth who harboured far-right doctrines, they'd be thrown out. We would not put up with it. When you actually look up at the Wikipedia or the dictionary description for far-right politics, it includes ethnic cleansing, homophobic, racist, neo-Nazis, Nazis, xenophobic, genocide, political violence. We're none of those things. And if anybody harboured those views, they would be out of our party very quickly indeed. The majority of our candidates are ex-Labour who are just disenchanted with the direction that the Labour Party are going in. They're rudderless. I don't know myself what Labour Party actually stand for anymore.
Well, I'll tell you what they don't stand for. They don't stand for the working class.
Not at all. I mean, you look at the amount of money now that they're pouring into a failed scheme. Who buys a failed shopping centre for £12 million or the best part thereof? It's like, a risk I'm willing to take with Sean's quote.
Let me bring something up. I mean, I'm going to have to bring it up whilst because I've got it. I mean, I've got two things I want to show. One is an Ali Akbar special, which is this money-eating thing with Sean at the top. Yeah. But this is the best one. Read that quote. If I announce publicly that we wanted to buy the spindles and what we wanted it for before we had completed, the vendors would have put the price up. The number of people who don't understand that as a basic part of negotiation, but feel qualified to give an opinion on the matter anyway, is quite concerning. I hope these people never get into any positions of power or authority in the borough, as it would be a disaster. That's the bit you can't see, as it would be a disaster. Now, the hilarious bit, there are many hilarious bits there, Paul, but the one I want to bring up is, if I announce publicly that we wanted to buy the spindles and what we wanted it for, what does he want it for? Did he not put up a consultation afterwards? Did he not come out and say he'd never been, he'd not been in it, he'd not looked at it, and he wanted the people of Oldham to help decide what it was going to be used for? Or did I imagine all of that?
Already know what they want it for. They are taking us for fools.
They are
think
moving
we
the
are...
civic centre. They're moving the civic centre into Spindles. They want a 5-star fit out for their council officers.
It's
They're
not
taking
only
us
that.
for fools.
Sorry, sir, I'm interrupting you there.
All right, go ahead.
Thanks. Sorry about that. It's what they're prioritising, what little funds we've got. I mean, we're heading full steam ahead into bankruptcy. We spent 12 million on a shopping centre that we couldn't afford, and we can't afford to run it, and we couldn't afford to buy it either. And he's on about spending a further 68 million, he's announced in the Oldham Times newspaper, to refurb it. But you look at the priorities of what was traditionally the Labour Party and what the town needs. You know, they're closing all these services down for what? In exchange for what? An eco centre that we don't want and we don't need, and Spindle shopping centre. And will Sean come out and say and confirm that he has not tried to sell it for $4.5 million since buying it?
Oh, so you've heard those rumours as well, that the council have tried to offload it?
I've not heard those rumours. I've had them sent to me
by
a source who said that the council have tried to sell it for £4.5 million. So I'd like Sean to publicly deny that he's tried to sell it for £4.5 million. And if he hasn't tried to sell it for £4.5 million, come out and say you haven't. Because you know the source I've got, Roger. And so
yeah, very, very reputable. I speak to this gentleman regularly. Very, very reputable. And his ability to unearth financial deals is second to none in this town, I think.
So he's bought something that's cost, I mean, he wouldn't tell us what he bought for it at first. He just repeated it was a bargain. And then he said it was $9.5 million. And then you put the costs on top of the purchase cost, the legal fees and stamp duties, probably closer to 12 million. And then earlier this week, I received information that it was for sale for $4.5 million.
He also refuses to tell us if he took on any of the debt that went with it. And he also refuses to say what the monthly overheads are and how much of it is coming out of council tax budget. Now, every time he refuses those things, they're answers in themselves, aren't they? Because this is a loudmouth who likes to go on social media at any opportunity to tell the rest of us how stupid we are. So when his gob is shut, there's a reason why his gob is shut.
He needs to come out and deny that it's been for sale. All he needs to say is, no, it isn't. We'll see if he doesn't.
Someone's put a post up and did I hear correct? He bought it for 12 million to spend 68. No, he needs to spend it. The total scheme will cost 68 million pounds. That's what they've released so far, isn't it, Paul? The total scheme will cost, yeah. And as we know, with the old town hall, hotel feature, every other council scheme, it never runs to budget.
And on the essential services that all our 20 wards need and want, they're all on the back burner now because of the budget's been blown to pieces by what I can only describe as fiscal insanity.
Paul, you're a businessman. Your auditor, the council's auditor in the accounts, forced, not once, but forced twice in those accounts, a clear statement from the official council auditor warning that the town was at risk of bankruptcy. Not once, but twice they forced that statement in the accounts. Now, as a businessman who sits with accountants, what does that say? Is that not a warning? Is that not like, bloody hell, guys, I don't want to be anywhere near this when it goes wrong? It's
alarm bells. I mean, these are debts that are being run up. I think I read it somewhere within those accounts. So currently 170 million debts.
Yeah.
You know, from prudential borrowing. Our children and our grandchildren are going to paying this back. And Sean is coming out with statements, it's a risk I'm willing to take. Well, pardon me, but he's not taking any risk. He's just spending the town's assets and leaving us in not a sea of debt, an ocean of debt. And the consequences are going to be devastating for everybody and already are. Look at the services we're having cut back now. And I'll go back to what Sarah was mentioning there about having what our party's all about. One thing that happens with the main political parties, the Tories, the Labour Party, the Lib Dems, they may get a councillor elected in any of the wards, and they might want to do what's best for that ward. And they'll go into the chambers, and the party whip will tell them, and often do, to vote for something that's not in the interest of the ward.
How many of them do you think is going to stand up and applaud him? How many of them will stand up and applaud him?
Every single one.
Yeah, that's the disgrace, isn't it? That's the disgrace, isn't it? Yeah.
The same as our Shah. They all stood up and clapped when she put her, when she stood up and said that she was being bullied and it's not right, and her friend is, all what she said.
And I've showed it. I proved it, Sarah, and I say it again and again because I think it's important, because these lies do not have the right to be aired without being challenged. I've learned that in my life by staying quiet about other lies told about me. She claimed I was a misogynist. She completely misquoted me. And my quote was there on Facebook for all to see. But actually what I said was I had no interest in her personal life. I get messages about it all the time, and I refused to get involved in that. And she twisted it into this thing of me saying that she slept her way to the top. And then they all stood and applauded her. Every councillor stood and applauded her while she declared her loyalty to Dale Cregan's getaway driver and another man who had kidnapped, tortured and sexually abused a young man that she was out on election night with, wearing a red rosette together. When the police turned up to the place where this young man had been abused, they found blood splattered all over the walls.
You couldn't make this up. I mean, I'm honestly, people have said the national newspapers or the local newspapers not picking up on this, and it's almost like there's a complete news blackout on.
There's an embargo, isn't there? There's like I don't know what that list is called that the government have, but we're blacklisted, aren't we? This news is blacklisted.
Honestly, Raji, it beggars belief. I mean, there was this week, 15-year-old girl who'd been raped, was examined, DNA examined in the police, which is humiliating.
You carry on talking, I'm putting the headline up. I've got it. Go on.
They did not even go and interview the man charged with raping her and didn't charge him.
Well, you and I know all about this stuff, don't we? You and I know all about the
what's
the police, the negligence, the corruption. I don't know what the word is, Paul. I'm struggling because I have friends of mine who are frontline police officers. Sarah, I know your husband did a stint as the police. These are people I love and care about, and they care about me, and I see the hard work they do. No wonder morale is at a low, because it's not them who are making these decisions. I'm flabbergasted. Yeah.
There are people walking out of the police force all the time. They don't want to be involved in all of that anymore. So there isn't the police on the streets to look after our communities, because they're quitting. They don't want to work in that environment where they're not allowed to do the job.
Mark has just stated, and sorry, I need to say this, Brian Hogan did not stand and clap for Miss Shah. And sorry, Mark, of course. So, we don't count Brian in that. I've got an interview. I don't count Brian as one of them. I'm afraid, Mark. Sorry, I don't count Brian as one of them. So that's where my apologies, our apologies. And then Brian is the only councillor we've had on here. Brave man. He came on. And they ostracised him afterwards. They complained about him afterwards. They tried to haul him through this dodgy standards committee afterwards. And do you know what he came to talk about? He came to talk about the grooming and gang rape of this town's children and the complete inaction of Oldham Council, Andy Burnham. And when that motion went to debate in the town hall, in the council meeting, and you both tuned in. I remember, we were all very active at the time. And what happened was they changed the wording so that what they passed the motion on was, we know what we're doing and everything's okay here. And at the very next council meeting, Paul, hidden away just before Christmas, quickly spoken about and missed by everyone, they had Beverly Hughes, Andy Burnham's sidekick, say that the investigation into grooming and gang rape in our town had now been kicked into touch until after the elections. They take us for fools.
One thing that I overlooked, Raj, and it's only when I was compiling that post that I put up last week, was that the email that was sent to Jim McMahon by the BBC reporter Kevin Fitzpatrick back in 2013.
Oh, the one I leaked right at the beginning where all this came out and they all said it was fake. That one.
It's within the body of that email, something I'd overlooked previously is that the BBC reporter Kevin Fitzpatrick said he got the information from the Asian community. So the Asian community, as us, have contacted the BBC, said there's a serious issue for child sex exploitation going on in some of the sushi bars. So they've done what they've thought was the right thing. And Jim McMahon and co have buried it.
They used the funeral.
What I missed, and I will apologise to the Asians out there, the Asians tried to do the right thing in our
Of course they did. You've got me here, and every Asian friend of mine is outraged by what's going on. We can't win, Paul. We're trying our best. We're trying our best to deal with this. And the white politicians and the white policy officers are happy to turn their back on the grooming and gang rape of white children because it protects the block vote that the cartels deliver to Jim McMahon. It's as simple as that.
Well, there's a paragraph, if I may, and it's only brief, what Sarah was touching on with the police force, and I posted it. I'm done with senior officers who will jump on any bandwagon, throw any officer under a bus for doing their job, do anything at all to get to that next rank and more power. I'm done with them pretending to be cops when they are just politicians in uniform. At least real politicians don't seek to hide their stench and for all the world to see in all their obnoxious and odious glory. Policeman who's had enough.
Yeah, Paul, and I want to bring this up because I value your support because I know when they come and arrest me, you'll be coming and visiting me, and Sarah will be coming and visit me, and you and the rest of them will be checking in on my daughter. Paul, you've been in my house. With my daughter, you've seen what it's like. It's pretty much a fortress to get in and get out, And for someone to get into my building and try my front door, Paul, I'm serious. I have knives in my house. I will defend myself, and I'll happily have this out, and share this because the police have failed me. You've seen what's gone on with the police. The police have comprehensively failed me, and I will defend myself.
I don't think it's just. I think the police are not being allowed to do the job that they're employed to do. They've been politicised. I mean, you look. Take Deborah Barrett Cole for an example.
Yeah,
there was 3 police cars turned up at her house. 2 police officers went in her house, and there were 4 police officers outside her house. That happened on 3 separate occasions. 3 police cars at her house. Now, what crime would you have to commit? What level of seriousness of crime would you have to commit to get 3 police cars and 6 police officers to turn up at your door, intimidate you, bully you, and put the fear of God up you? What crime would you have to commit? Because they never turned up when somebody was accused of raping a 15-year-old girl. And only this week, a chap that's dragged and wrestled a woman to the ground was fined £213. And he tried to rape her.
Of course he did. I think that's what I was saying last week. Thank you, Paul. So I've not misunderstood it either. Her reaching her alarm and him running off means he was going to rape her. That's, I had to read in between the lines, but we're of the same opinion, aren't we? That he was after raping her.
What is wrong with people? £213 fine for dragging a woman to the floor and trying to rape her. What is wrong with our police force right now?
They're under political control. They're under political control.
4 female candidates who wanted to stand for Proud of Oldham and Saddleworth And most of our candidates are ex-Labour.
Gary Tarbuck's post is just up, and he was just saying, you know, they used the funeral of one of my fellow Fusiliers who was butchered to cover it up. They did, Gary. Jim McMahon used the funeral of Lee Rigby to cover up news of grooming gangs operating out of Sisha bars, as Paul has rightly pointed out, after Asian people went desperately to the police to try to get them to try and intervene.
That's the irony. It were the Asians who gave them the information. Yeah. I mean, you couldn't make it up. The Asians were trying to do the right thing and say, look, you know, there's people amongst us in our community that are carrying out crimes, and they've reported them. The police have ignored the Asians. It's ridiculous.
They've ignored everybody for their own gain. They're not interested. They're only interested in what they can gain, the power.
I'm flabbergasted with this because it came out. The police, they defend the decision not to charge rape of 15-year-old girl suspect, and it's Nick Jackson again from the Oldham Times. What Nick Jackson omits in his headline, I think the more important aspect of the headline, and he's not stupid. He's done this on purpose. It wasn't that they didn't charge the guy. It's the fact that they never even interviewed the guy. And then afterwards, they told her that the CPS have refused to take it on when they'd never even sent it to the CPS.
Who was this? The gatekeeper again? Was it?
Oh, this predates the gatekeeper, so it predates Kenny Blaine. But Kenny Blaine is a disgraceful policeman. In fact, I'll fast forward because I'm doing it in a random way because I got both of you on, and we might as well do this together. So let me fast forward to the email that Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine sent over to me, and the gatekeeper. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm of the opinion. I'm honestly of the opinion that if this man isn't bent, then he's inept, because it's one or the other. And he describes himself as the gatekeeper. And I'll put this iPad up. You guys can see a screen if I put this up, can't you? So I'll put this up, right? First of all, I have reported things to the police. They've took the best part of 6 months to get back to me, okay? Debbie Abrahams, according to him, provided what she believed was evidence of an offence. This is when she doctored and falsified evidence. Once again, Sarah, Paul, he never went and interviewed Debbie Abrahams as to where she got the evidence from. He just decided on his own what Debbie Abrahams had done. I am on record for referring to Debbie Abrahams as doctoring evidence in an attempt to have an innocent man arrested because he challenged her on her failures to protect white working class girls from the grooming gangs. To this date, Debbie Abrahams has comprehensively failed to comment on the grooming and gang rape of children from the school gate of Count Hill. Count Hill is in her constituency. She thinks it'll just go away.
She's been fighting this for 9 years. She's been fighting this for 9 years.
Do you believe her?
According to her.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we've got emails from her office confirming that she'd never heard about these things. Remember, to her constituents in the lead up to her. Next one. Arooj Shah. Apparently, it's my job to report it to Action Fraud.
Okay.
No, sorry, my job is to call the police. Kasim Lenny called me a gay Christian convert and incited Islamists to come and murder me. Mohammed Nadeem, Arooj Shah's mate. Is there any ambiguity in either of your opinion that he was going to stop me from voting ever again? What does that mean? I'm an adult. I'm not a criminal. I have the right to vote. So if someone is going to stop me from voting ever again, what does that mean? It means they're going to kill me. She put love hearts next to that.
And she's the deputy leader of Oldham Council, putting love hearts next to it.
Yeah. This is the best bit. Glodick Baths. Oldham Council is gone to Helen. They've gone to Helen Lockwood, who's come to Oldham Council from neck deep in corruption, named in a government report for missing millions or squandered millions, and calling Britain And apparently, the proceedings for the actual sale of the baths had begun outside of PERDA, meaning no breach in terms of the PERDA period. He's a liar. He has no understanding of the law. I'm telling you this. Sorry, I put myself on camera because the sale of Glodic baths was unlawful. It was illegal. It was a bribe. It's an affront to our democracy. The council tried to rig an election. An election where Arud Shah was standing. There is not a single reason why those baths should have been sold, transferred at a knockdown price to mates of hers days before an election.
An investigating journalist worth the salt will be at least looking into it and reporting on it. But there's a complete media blackout on these issues.
And it's a police blockage. I've been hesitant to call out DI Kenny Blaine and his associates, but there is a jigsaw. Everywhere in the world I've worked, Paul, there is a jigsaw to corruption. First, you have gangsters who control the communities. Then you have corrupt politicians in bed with these gangsters. You have bent council officials. You have a media that turns a blind eye. And for all of this to be allowed to operate, you have a bent and corrupt police force. And here is evidence, as far as I'm concerned, finally, through Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine, of a bent and corrupt police force. This is the man who refused, and I've seen your emails, Paul, he refused to interview Sean Fielding for all of his misdemeanors in his malicious communication, his harassment, and then said it's not past the criminal threshold. He refused to interview the witnesses. He refused to interview the suspect. He just quashed it. The gatekeeper.
Well, can I just? I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question here. Thomas Maher, who was the far right extremist who murdered Joe Cox on the 22nd of June 2016. He stabbed her 18 times and shot her in the street and killed her. The man was a complete despot, and as far as I'm concerned, he's a lunatic and deserves locking up with his far right ideals. Sean Fielding has written to the daughters, employers of one of his political opponents, and tried to state that she had the same political opinions as Thomas Maher.
Absolutely. And she's a lovely young woman. She's a lovely young woman.
Yeah, but the thing is, the point I'm trying to make, Roger, is how do you define hate crime or hate abuse on social media? If you are trying to incite somebody to cause them trouble, grief, distress, and fear, if people would have believed what Sean Fielding was saying about that man's daughter, her employers, that could have put her in perilous danger.
Paul,
and that is hate crime. That Paul? Are people going to stand up and applaud him for that?
Yeah, hate crime, Paul. And
applaud him for that.
You're right, Paul, and you're right to be angry.
Daughter's employer as the council leader, and he's no idea what her political opinions are, and she's certainly, definitely anything like that idiot man, Thomas Maher. He's a despot, and yet Sean would have you believe that one of his opposition's daughter shared the same opinions of that idiot, who deservedly should be in prison for the rest, as far as I'm concerned, the rest of his life. He's a far-right extremist. But to say that of a political opponent's daughter to his daughter's employers, are they all going to stand up and applaud that in the Oldham Council chambers and cheer Sean Fielding on for sending letters of that nature, of a hate crime, to somebody's innocent daughter's employers? It's scandalous. It is absolutely scandalous.
The police are involved in the cover-up. The police are involved in the cover-up. Let me put something up just to show you. Here is Neil Wilby with Sophie Allworth. Sophie Allworth saying thank you to Neil Wilby. Neil Wilby made reference to me as a police narc. a police informant.
Which
I
could get you
report.
killed.
It's why I sleep with a knife next to my bed.
That could get you killed in this community.
And do you know what Detective Inspector Kenny Blame said?
He was the gatekeeper.
Yeah, the gatekeeper. Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine reckons there was no need to interview Neil Wilby or Ewan Stewart, who'd been repeating these things online. That apparently, because I've shared with people that I have friends in the police force, the term informant could be construed as friendships. He's called me a narc. What is the terminology for the word narc? He's made reference to he's used the word roof, a police roof. Detective Inspector Blaine, so we're clear, has put my life at risk, and if the consequences are if I stab someone who knocks on my door inadvertently wrongly because I'm fearful of who they are and my daughter's in my house, it's on Greater Manchester Police. And I'm saying this live on air right now, so Greater Manchester Police can hear this. If I stab someone, if someone tries to break into my house, someone's knocked on my door that I'm not comfortable about, and I put a knife through them, it's on you because I am in fear of my life because Neil Wilby has referred to me as a police narc, and Detective Inspector Blaine from Greater Manchester Police feels that is not putting my life at risk. Detective Inspector Blaine has refused to interview Wilby. He's refused to interview Sean Fielding. He's refused to interview Jim McMahon, Arood Shah. There is corruption in this town, and the police are at the centre of this corruption. They're involved in the cover-up of corruption. Gatekeeper, D.I. Blaine. Debbie, I don't need to put my opinion in there. I'm telling you how I feel it. The police, Greater Manchester Police, are corrupt. They are responsible for covering up child abuse, proven. They turned a blind eye to 97 Asian paedophiles in Manchester because they were told to look for white ones.
I don't know if you know, Raja, but there's a chap, well, I'm sure you do know, Nazir Afzal, OB, former Chief Prosecutor of the North of England.
Brave man.
Radio 4 broadcast that the reporting restrictions on a circular were lifted in October 2018, and that circular was 2008. And that said that the girls in the towns and cities across England and the UK had made an informed choice to sexuality, and it was not for you, the police, to get involved. And this is Nazir Afzal on Radio 4. Nazir Afzal was curious as to who put the reporting restrictions on that circular. Now, funny old thing, in 2007 and 2008, Andy Burnham was a minister in the Labour government that released that circular. And when Debbie Barrett-Cole asked him about it, in January 28th of 2020, in an open forum, Debbie Barrett-Cole stood up and said, have you got any comment to make about the circular that basically doomed tens of thousands of young girls and lads to the fate, ruin their lives? And Andy Burnham squirmed in his seat. And you fast forward a year, and there's 6 police officers at her door, 3 police cars, and 2 policemen in her house, threatening and intimidating her. She's been run out of town. She's gone into hiding.
She's in exile. She is in political exile. I never thought I'd see this in my own country.
She has had phone calls to threaten to kidnap and rape her. That's what's happened with Debbie Barrett-Cole.
But it's all part. It's all part of the political game. It's a political game that they're playing. They're attacking Mark and Kath. You know, they're attacking Debbie because she's now, yes, she's been a huge voice, but she was standing as a candidate, which is putting them at threat. It's will attack anybody and everybody they can if they are standing in their way, which is why when we get potential candidates to come up and stand for us, immediately they're being investigated.
They are using the police. They are using the police as stormtroopers.
Yeah, of course they are.
Gary Tarbuck and I had a conversation today, early today, and I put a post up and I put down a picture, a split image. We were only doing as we were told. And I said to Gary, I did it because of impact, because I read the police inspector, former chief inspector, David Sutcliffe. He wrote an open letter to Andy Burnham.
Just stay there. I'm going to put it up. I've got it. I knew you'd want to talk about it. I've got it. Just give me 1 second. I'll put it up on the screen.
Within that letter, and this is from a former police inspector at Greater Manchester Police, who stated, this to Andy Burnham, you are a corrupt liar, a coward, and someone who brings the Labour Party and the Greater Manchester region into disrepute. You keep illegally withholding documents that you've been lawfully requested so that you and Bev Hughes can escape potential criminal charges. You are a fraud whose whole career has been based on criticising others and never making decisions of taking responsibility for your own actions and inactions. This is from a former police inspector, David Sutcliffe of Greater Manchester Police, in an open letter to Andy Burnham. And it goes on. It goes on.
I put the paragraph for you, Paul. I've just put the paragraph. Read that again. You are a fraud. I've just put it up on the screen because it's there.
You are a fraud whose whole career has been based on criticising others whilst never making decisions or taking responsibility for your own actions and inactions. And a bit further down, while senior officers with the same level of competence and poor work ethic as yourself have wasted millions of pounds, destroyed morale, and made decent officers ill and leave the force. Your three main character traits, Mr. Burnham, are laziness, incompetence, and unprincipled self-promotion that have led the advancements of senior officers of the same ilk.
And I believe the I Blaine is exactly that type of officer he makes reference to.
And he's not the only one. Maggie Oliver has called on Andy Burnham to do the right thing and resign.
4 years. She's pulled him up 4 years.
Want to get this child sex exploitation properly investigated, openly, transparently, and credibly, that all the town will believe, put somebody like Maggie Oliver in charge of it and let them run it. Because Dr. Mark Peel resigned after 1 month because a good police officer will always follow the evidence. So where do you think Dr. Mark Peel would start interviewing? And he was out of there quick. That should tell its own story.
Sean claims he doesn't know why Dr. Mark Peel left. But did you remember the council meeting? Sorry, I wanted both of you on because I know I talk to you offline every now and then, but I wanted both of you on because I wanted people to see this chat, and see how actually we're a bunch of normal people. Sorry, guys, Sarah, we've met a couple of times, but lockdown got in the way. At some point, we'll have a gin and tonic. I see your messages about your liking for gin, and Paul's been in my house. Paul sat in my house and had coffee whilst laughing away whilst I'm running after a 5-year-old and playing Lego with her, So, and they'd have us. They'd portray us as these extremists. They'd portray us as far-right racists. They'd portray us as child abusers, and they get away with it because the police are in the pocket. And you've had four ladies. Sorry, you've had 4 ladies, 4 women who've wanted to stand as candidates who've been scared off. Where's the headline in the newspaper for that?
We're portrayed as stupid, far right. I'm
sorry, Sarah. What's your profession? So you share it with everyone.
I am quite high up in the NHS. I'm not stupid. I've got a master's degree. I'm in the NHS. I'm essentially a Labour girl. Yeah. But I'm disenchanted with Labour. I'm not unintelligent. I'm in the NHS, in the caring profession. Every patient I see, is treated exactly the same as everybody else. I'm not racist. I'm not
Are you
racist at all.
Are you
I'm not, it baffles me how they make assumptions about people. And they've investigated me. They investigated me 18 months ago when we started Proud of Oldham and Saddleworth, and Paul was standing in the generals. They investigated me. They investigated Paul. They investigated my husband. We know this because of somebody who is in the council had told us. They have searched all about us. So they know who we are, yet they like to portray us to the public, who we're asking for faith from. We're asking for the public's faith in helping the communities get better, getting back to a better way of living for our children and grandchildren. We're asking for that. So they're going to try and blacken us. They're trying to make us all out to be these unintelligent, stupid, far-right, racist people. And we're nothing like. It's them. It's them. This is the political game they play. It's ridiculous.
We know who the real racists are. They're the real. We know the people who have divided our town and turned us against each other. And they want me off Facebook. They want me off this because I've just relentlessly exposed them. 2 years I've been at it, relentlessly.
Roger, I took a phone call earlier this week from a former avid supporter of SEAN Fielding. And I spent about 20 minutes on the phone with him, and he profusely apologised. He said, the name calling I was involved in last year, he said, and I tweeted against you. He said, I made a lot of remarks that I now take back and I regret making them. And he apologised, and I accepted his apology, and I thanked him. I said, I really appreciate you've took the time to give me a call. And I don't harbour any grudges against the guy. He got carried away and swept up in this frenzy that some of his colleagues had whipped him up into. But the reality is, as Sarah said, we haven't got a whip. And when we've approached for candidates, we've asked for candidates of any race, creed, colour, ethnicity, sexuality to come and join us, and with no whip. So if you get voted into your ward, all we want you to do is do what's best for your ward, and that's what we've not got now. And we won't have that if we carry on voting Labour, Lib Dem or Tories, because they'll all follow a whip. And a lot of people don't know what the whip is. And the whip is you've got to do as you're told by the party. So if you get in a councillor and you get in a councillor for, say, Wearmouth, and you want to do something that's good for Wearmouth, and you turn up at the council chambers and your party tells you to do something that's bad for Wearmouth, they'll whip you and they'll make you vote for something that's bad for Wearmouth. And I think that is inherently wrong. If you're voted in as a candidate in any ward, you should do what's best for the people in that ward and try and make that ward a better place for everybody who lives there.
Paul,
that is what it's about.
Paul, how simple is that? What a lovely, how simple is that? Because that's surely what local politics is about. We elect our leaders to represent us and fight for us and fight for, and fight for the communities that they stand for. How difficult, where is the far right there? Where is the misogyny there? All we care about, you've got it in your title. And I say we because I consider myself one of you guys. I can't be one of you guys officially because what happens then is then I can be shut down easier, so and this offer, by the way, I know people say, oh, you always have the Proud of Oldham lot on. I'll have any of you on, so if the Labour lot wants to get in touch, I'll have one of them on. If the Tories want to get in touch, if the Lib Dems, Howard Sykes, I'd love to have you on so I could ask you about Rod Blythe and ask you about your relationship with Cyril Smith, and once and for all put this to bed, because I'm sure the people of our town want it put to bed that you did not know. We want reassurance from our politicians. We look up to them. We want Howard Sykes to say, I am appalled that two of my friends were paedophiles and one of the most prolific paedophiles, and I'm ashamed to have known him, because that's what I would do. So There's Martin Judd. There's Martin Judd standing. I want to bring this up for you. Sorry, I want to nudge things along. There's Martin Judd standing, who's you know, who they quietly removed, were completely silent, and now he's charged, facing trial for child sex offences. Councillor Martin Judd, and this is who they've put up instead. They've put on Kyle. How do you pronounce that? Say, is it Python? Python? He is the councillor's son, isn't he?
He is the son of Clint Python.
And read this. He is. I mean, let's zoom in on his photograph for you. Look at that. You know, that's him there. And what he's claiming as his track record is, he's gone to university, studied politics, left university. His dad's mate, Jim McMahon's given him a job. So he's been working for Jim McMahon. And now Jim McMahon wants another tentacle in the council. And he's put forward, and he has, because we all know who controls the Labour Party in this town. I was on the phone to a Labour Party politician this week, and he's laughing at me. He goes, Roger, what makes you think Sean Fielding's in charge? All of us know he's not in charge. We know who's really in charge. And
but what has he got to do with Hollingwood? What does he know about Hollingwood? What does he know about the people who live there?
I'll tell you. I'll tell you what he knows. I have lived in Oldham all my life, all his 24 years of life, yeah. And what he knows about Hollingwood is he attended the University of Leeds, where he attained a degree in politics. And I now live and work in the town for the MP as a caseworker. This work puts me, but this is his context. Whatever he's done in terms of his degree in politics and doing a little stint for some MP, whoever it is, as a caseworker, puts him in a great position to be the councillor for Hollingwood. He'd get lost walking around Hollingwood.
It puts you in the worst position. Having a degree in politics or knowledge of politics puts you in the worst position because you're not in touch with the people of the community. You know what you're taught to be a politician, how to lie, how to talk down to the people, how to play this political circus, how to slag off your opponents. That's what you're taught by doing a degree in politics.
Well, it gets better. You're also taught to be a divisive, sorry, I can't swear, but you're taught to be a divisive twit, yeah? And this is him there, right? Local elections, we want candidates who care about our town and put our town first and our communities first. He has made this into a political game straight away in his letter to people of Hollingwood. These are really important elections. There is little doubt that they have been undermined by a Tory government. This is why we need a different direction. If we repeat the mistakes of the last decade of cuts and austerity, we have no hope of writing a new chapter for Britain based on security and opportunity. What on earth is this boy talking about?
Is he high?
Hollingwood. You've got a candidate in Hollingwood, haven't you? So I'm look at this. So Python or whatever it's called, a lad out of university who wants to fight the Tories. Yeah. And then Chronic Oldham, who they've been trying to find out for years who this guy is. And he's brilliant. So after promising restaurants, a cinema and bowling alley a decade ago in Hollingwood, Hollingwood is actually getting a coffee shop. Another fantastic undelivered legacy by the usual suspects, led by serial regeneration failure, Jim McMahon, and Labour Oldham once again let off any accountability by the abysmal local press for failing to deliver. Well, tell me about the new one. Tell me about Ronnie, because he's standing in Hollingwood, isn't he? Yeah.
Ronnie, he was salt of the earth, man.
Sorry, because his things just come up next to me. He's just put a post up, so that's why I said, I'm not picking on him. I'm not favouring.
Good to have you on board.
He's absolutely lovely man who is so passionate about his area where he lives in Hollingwood. He knows the people, he knows the area, he knows what's needed, and he will, he's there to change Hollingwood and to make it, for the people and fight the fight there.
To stick up for your area.
Mm-hmm.
So the battle in Hollingwood, Sarah. So the battle in Hollingwood is between a lad who's come out of university with a politics degree and spent a bit of time working for some MP as a caseworker, and a bloke who belongs to the local community. Because no one's going to vote for Tory or Lib Dem in Hollingwood. The fight is between some kid who's come out of it. So the people, we get the politicians we deserve. I believe, and there's an old saying, yeah. And too many of our people have been completely disenfranchised on purpose not to vote. It's a tactic. The disenfranchisement of the white working class, where you're told you don't vote. If you don't vote Labour, you don't vote. And if you say anything else, you're a racist. It's a tactic of the Labour Party. So I urge you, and I urge Ronnie, to go out there and inspire your people, the people of Hollingwood, to look themselves in the mirror, see themselves for the human beings that they are, roll your sleeves out, go out and vote, and go out and take control of your community.
All Ronnie's going to do is what's best for Hollingwood.
Yeah.
None of the others will. And it's as simple as that.
Well, what that Pythian lad probably doesn't even know where it is, Paul. Let's be honest,
No. And like Sarah was saying, you've got a guy rocking up at a university trying to stand up for Hollingwood. He's had no life experiences.
He wants to stand on issues. He wants to stand up, and he has done. He's said, this is my platform I'm standing on. He's not even stopped to talk to the people of Hollingwood to understand what the issues are that they care about. He's already decided what's important, and he's expecting blind loyalty from the working classes to go out and vote for a Labour candidate.
And look what happened last time they voted for a Labour candidate in Hollingwood.
Well, he's on trial next year, and they tried to hide that, Paul. He's on trial next year for child sex offences.
Can I talk at this stage about the party and about being an independent party? So we've had a little bit recently about, you can't be independent and a party, it's contradicting itself. Now, we've already spoke about being a party, and all our candidates are independent and what they want to talk about in their community. We don't have a whip at all. We want our people to be doing things for the community. And that's pretty much it. You need to have a bit of life experience.
As someone who worked with politicians, what they talk about, what you're describing, are your principles.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, the principles are what your foundations are built on, because they define you. The wind changes, things happen in the world, but it's your principles that get you through. So when you look back and you can say, that man or that woman, I know who she was and what she stood for. And I look at your guys and I think, I know who they are and I know what they stand for. You stand for putting the people who elect them first. And
correct.
Yeah. And serving the communities that elect them.
Roger,
and my job. Sorry, Paul.
Can I just bring a point up here? And I can't overemphasize the significance of the point I'm going to bring up. Sarah and I was involved in it, as Paul Shilton was involved in Save Our Valleys. Now, Save Our Valleys, they're going to build 265 houses in a link road on what is the last remaining countryside and wildlife habitat of its type in Saddleworth West, Leeds, Groton and Springhead. Stephen Hewitt and I and Sarah and Paul fought tooth and nail, as did a lot of the community, fought tooth and nail against it. We haven't got the infrastructure for it. There's no support for it. The roadworks won't suit it. It's going to devastate and change Leeds Village. Of the people that wrote in, there was 242 people put pen to paper. 241 were against it. And it still got voted through by Cllr Pythian, who was a chair of the planning committee. When they had the planning application, and of 99.6% of the people in that area voted against it, and they said it was the most shambolic planning meeting ever. We have had a 2-year battle raising money as a community. We managed to raise money to put up a legal challenge for a judicial review. Again, unfortunately, we lost that, and we're going to be stuck with 265 houses in the link road that we simply cannot accommodate in our area, in our ward. And nobody wanted it who lived in the ward. Now, this is going to happen in Royton, in Shaw, in Chadderton, in Medlock Vale. What Andy Burnham has done, he came up with what's called the GMSF. If people who don't know what it is, it means Greater Manchester Spatial Framework. Now, what he was doing was allocating houses in every borough, the 10 boroughs of Greater Manchester, obviously Oldham and Saddleworth being one of them. Now, Stockport Council, thank God, voted against it. And because they voted against it, it was scrapped. So what Andy Burnham's now got on the table is Greater Manchester Spatial Framework version 2, V2. I don't know what a V2 rocket does. It is going to decimate all the beauty spots. What's happened in Diggle, where they've chopped the trees down this week, will be Toy Town in comparison with GMSF V2, because this is coming. They are going to build all the beauty spots. It is nothing at all to do with the homeless or providing houses for the homeless. It's nothing to do with first-time buyers. It's to do with raising revenue to service the debt that they're running up at the town.
Yeah, and we can see it. We can see it.
They're going to rip up all the beauty spots. One question I would ask every single person in Oldham and Saddleworth, to ask any candidate, are you going to vote against GMSF version 2? Ask them that question, because Pride of Oldham and Saddleworth, they've got no whip, and in that area, it will allow those people to be able to vote against it. Stephen Hewitt turned up and was told by the Labour Party he had to vote for it. Even though he was against it, he had to vote for it. They threw him out the party. And that's when I said to him, the whip needs to go. People who stand as councillors for an area should be sticking up for that area, whether it be Royden, whether it be Werner, whether it be Failsworth, whichever area it is. They should be listening to what the people want in those wards. And this Greater Manchester Spatial Framework version 2 is going to totally decimate many parts and areas throughout our beloved borough. You're going to urbanise areas where open, what's called other protected open land, which is OPAL, abbreviated as OPAL, the green belt, the environment, all the environmentalists, everybody's saying you shouldn't be doing this. How many mills have we got in Oldham that we could convert into apartments?
Paul, they don't want to. You've got to understand, this is nothing about servicing the people of our town. This is about building high council tax properties that take up minimum council resources, maximising profits. If it's a business, it's a profit, isn't it? You know, we bring in people who take the least from us but give the most, so the profit margins are the biggest, and we pay ourselves, award ourselves record pay rises year on year on year. Now, Paul, let me bring something up. This is Moy put this up. I think you guys share this. Now, Moy put his council tax bill up, and you and I had the conversation, and I remember we having the conversation. I'd done the sums. I'm like saying, Paul, it's not 2.99%. It's the other side of 3%, right? Like, no. And the council like, no, it's 2.9. What's she called? The local democracy reporter.
Who's still not declared who's paying them.
Yeah. Well, I've got something on that in a second. I've got a freedom of information in that in a second that I'll bring up for you guys. But look at this. Council tax, total council tax for your area and valuation band, 3% total. What a liar. What a liar.
Is that barefaced lies?
Yeah, it's another barefaced lies, isn't it? Or you can't count.
There you go.
Or you can't count. But have a look at that. The Mayoral Police and Crime Commissioner precept has gone up by nearly 5%. But this is the best bit. The Mayoral General Precept. Now that is, the Mayoral General Precept is what we pay to fund Sophie Hallworth's job.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we paying a council tax percentage that's hidden away in the fire service as well on purpose? Don't think that's an accident. Should we not know how much of our money is directly going to Andy Burnham for his team of whatever they are to be dancing around, getting paid? It's a joke. They take us for fools. None of us wanted this mayor. None of us were asked about this mayor. When the elections took place, none of us were told that we'd have to pay for this mayor. And now he's come in, and the first thing he's done is he's hired the girlfriends and wives and mistresses of his mates.
You know, any journalist worth the soul would come into our area and at least look into these issues and report them as on an unbiased and open and honest and transparent way.
And Andy Burnham launched this week, because his mate Jennifer Williams was running the story, something to do with this strategy against violence against women, or abuse against women. What he forgot to mention, and what she forgot to mention, was his homelessness lead was a guy called Ivan Lewis, the MP Ivan Lewis, who was suspended from the party for dodgy dealings with young women. There were young women who came forward during the Me Too campaign who spoke how uncomfortable they were. There was a teenager, I'm sure she was a teenager at the time. He wanted to take her back to his house to drink champagne.
Is any of them not dodgy?
And Burnham is sat there talking about launching his, this strategy to protect women. The guy's a hypocrite.
Roger.
And his mate Ivan Lewis got off with it because by the time the Labour Party had decided what to do, he just resigned from the Labour Party and saw out his term, taking his wages.
Andy Burnham pledged when he was elected that he would end rough sleeping by 2020. He ended by 2020. When he got elected, Andy Burnham pledged, when his political promises, he pledged he would end homelessness and rough sleeping by 2020. Now, I don't know if you saw the newspapers not 2 weeks ago, some poor lad froze to death in a doorway in Manchester.
And do you know one of the reasons? I have very dear friends of mine, Paul, who deliver frontline services in homelessness, have been doing for decades, yeah? And when Andy Burnham came in, they said, oh, here he is, Mr. Billy Big Bollocks, making all of these promises that he knows he can't keep, but he'll just get him some headlines in the newspapers. He doesn't understand the issue here properly. He doesn't understand any of it. He's condescending of everyone who's worked on this for decades and have tried their best. And unfortunately, Paul, what he's come and done is he's completely disrespected an entire sector and he's politicised it. So the hard work that frontline charities are doing, people now look at him and think, oh, it's Andy Burnham's problem, he's fucked it up, it's your fault. He's just made it worse. And then he was quoted, so what you've said, he was quoted in a newspaper, again by Jennifer Williams last year, when he reckons he's fulfilled his pledge in principle because he's offered enough beds for all the homelessness. So that means he's done it. If this was just about offering beds to homeless people or rough sleepers, it would have been dealt with decades ago. It isn't just about offering beds. It's about the complex needs that they have.
They spend £12 million on spindles, and there's people freezing to death in shop doors. And this is this is our latest version of the Labour Party. I mean, what have they become? What have they become? Is it any wonder? And going back to what Sarah was saying earlier, most of our candidates, I think most all of them, are ex-Labour. And they're ex-Labour, just disenchanted. They're rudderless. How can you prioritise spending 12 million on a failed shopping centre and watching people freeze to death in shop doorways? We've got a third of our children who are under the poverty line.
And he's increased stealth tax. He's increased the cost of school meals. Stealth tax.
Correct. It's going to hit the poorest.
Yeah. It's a stealth tax. A Labour Party introducing stealth taxes to hit the poorest, where at the same time, Paul, like the men, the Men in Sheds project and Madlow, the youth provision, he spent over £100,000 on hiring 2 new press officers.
And cutting the mental health, the community support, the community police, and it's going to have a massive knock-on effect. All your wards at ward level are going to lose out.
Of course
at
they
some
are.
point.
Of course.
I spoke with Paul Shilton, and Paul Shilton has got some great ideas. He'd like to see the Groton Pavilion rebuilt. So would I. And I mentioned to Paul, Saddleworth pay roughly about 20 million a year in rates. So in the last 10 years, they've paid about £200 million in rates into Oldham Council. So over the last 3 decades, it's 600 million. And I said to Paul, Oldham Council should be proportionately spending money in each ward, not distributing it in stupid urban ideas. Nobody wants this eco-centre. If you go round Glodick and speak to the people who live there, they don't want it.
They've not even been asked. They weren't even asked.
They don't want it. And we've got something natural. We've been blessed with lots of natural beauty spots all over different wards of Oldham. The Greater Manchester Spatial Framework version 2 is going to rip them all up. And then they're going to try to artificially create what we've got naturally that they're destroying. I mean, you couldn't make this crap up.
Paul,
it's delusional. How much are they going to spend on this eco-centre?
Hundreds of millions, Paul.
We need to stop people dying on the streets. We need to address the mental health issues in Oldham. We need to address poverty. We need to get the people. They're not doing any of these things. Where are the values? Where are the values?
They're in Shilton. They're in Didsbury. They're in South Manchester. That's where they are. They're not here.
No. But what have our children and grandchildren got to look forward to? What have they got?
We're a
generation.
Oh, come on. We're gonna one day MTV will make a program on Oldham, or someone will will dramatise what's gone on, and you'll have Irishimi as the mayor's consort, right, being driven around with our rude shower with the window open, and when the mayor and the mayoress step out of this limousine or whatever it is, the smell of cannabis will follow them.
Yeah,
that's what'll happen. I'm sorry, I'm I'm mocking and I'm making this up, but this is what is it? I mean, this is disgraceful.
I've got nothing against the police; they do a tough job. But when they're led by headless chickens,
it's worse than that. They're led by people who want to climb the career ladder at any expense and are happy to not just tread on you and I, they will tread on their fellow police officers to get to where they want to get to.
David Sutcliffe said, and Andy Burnham's already come out, he wants to be leader of the Labour Party. So why is he standing for Mayor of Manchester if it's not just a stepping stone for his own political gain? Andy Burnham's interested in one person, Andy Burnham.
Yeah.
How can you have any credibility whatsoever if you're throwing your chief of police under the bus and you lose 80,000 records in 1 year? And if wasn't off 80,000.
No, Paul. No, you've got it wrong.
4,500.
Yeah, well, they found 4,500 more.
Yeah, they've just lost another 4,500. I mean, when the politicians, the likes of Jim McMAHON and Sean Fielding, show us the evidence, and BBC is saying, well, hang on a minute, 55,000 rates reported, and then Greater Manchester Police, we've lost 80,000 in a year. And we've just lost another 4,500. Oh, and by the way, PS, we've just blown 27 million on a computer system that doesn't work. How about re-electing me? I mean, you couldn't make this up.
No, Paul, wait, Paul.
This.
Paul, wait.
You won't know where to start.
I do. They did this. Isn't it lovely? Look. They lit the Civic Centre up orange.
You'd have to put rates up to pay for electric bill.
candidates will not get any airtime in the local press. None of you will. None of what's been done to you will. And I've been saying it all along. The council funded local press, and I've stuck my neck out there. You know, you've seen, I've said it, you know, I'm not, you know. And this is what the Freedom of Information request response to Paul Jarvis came back with. He requested the Oldham Evening Chronicle, the Oldham Times, and the Manchester Evening News from 2011 to 2020. It's very clear. Yeah, he asked for a few questions, but that's the first one. Very clear. Yeah? No ambiguity there. Amnesia from the council. They only go up to the end of 2017. They refuse to share 2018, 2019, and 2020. So they refuse to share the last 3 years. But put that aside.
Is that 371,000?
Paul.
485,000?
Yes, Paul. That's what they own up to, and that's without the last 3 years. I've told you. I've told you. They've spent £1 million with the press. I've told you. People in the council have told me the truth.
No, we have not been offered any airtime from any of the local papers. Nothing.
Hold on, I'm putting Paul back on. Sorry, I'm sorry. I need to. People need to see his face.
I mean, Flip, who can launch their own campaign on the front page of a newspaper? And they've just given £485,000 of ratepayers' money. This is just unbelievable.
And Paul, Paul,
his money they just put rates up.
Paul, so we're clear.
To death in the street.
This is up to the end of 2017. They're refusing to share what they did in 2018, 2019, and 2020.
Have they given a reason why?
Have they heck? Have they heck?
I was hoping for a Mickey Mouse reply.
Sorry, Paul, I've got you on full screen for a reason, because I've been saying this all along. For the corruption to thrive, the so-called independent media have got to be in the pockets of the council and the corrupt politicians. Well, there is the evidence, Paul.
It's not often I'm stuck for us. But my goodness, it beggars belief. They've just put rates up. He's going on about the council being skinned.
He's increased.
They're giving the local newspapers £500,000 of our ratepayers' money, and then he appears on the front page.
He's just announced 3 times school meal prices has gone up in the last 12 months. 3 times. And he's given for £500,000 that they own up to. That excludes the last 3 years. He has spent, the Labour Party, the council, whoever you want to call it, has spent £1 million of your money funding the local press. How does that make the people of Oldham feel? And you wonder why he gets the front page on the Oldham Times. You wonder why the Oldham Chronicle doesn't report on Jim McMahon using the funeral of Lee Rigby. You wonder why there's not a single word on the corruption and cover-up of the sale of Glodick baths. And what did they do? What is the sale of Glodick baths the way they did? It is corruption. It is a dereliction of... It is scandalous. What they did was the council tried to bribe an election. The council tried to bribe an election.
Well, we've got 10 days left till Purdah, so keep an eye out for
what you gave? You did there. They're already at it. What, Paul?
I was going to say, keep your eye out.
What is
for any?
How much would it have cost? How much would it have cost to demolish the Hollies?
Well, yeah, there you go.
What, 200 grand?
Yeah,
250,000.
Yeah.
Did a cart it all off? It's your tipping fees as well.
Yeah.
But on another note, I believe that the newspapers covered Sean Fielding's girlfriend raising £100 for charity.
She's got. Apparently, I'm a misogynist for questioning why the Oldham Times.
Is that we've just given £500,000? So, I'll tell you what, it's just like me saying, "Oh, I'm going to give 10 grand to charity, and by the way, I'm standing as election. Can you put it in the newspaper?" They'd look at you as if you were from Pluto. How can you take that seriously, that it's nothing but PR for an election candidate? It's wrong. It's just out and out wrong. If you're going to run for charity, why have you got to be on the newspaper with your boyfriend who's running for office?
And she's running for charity in October. October. It's in October, Paul.
With hundreds of thousands of other people.
Yeah.
Who are all doing it for charity.
Who none of them asking for press that we're paying out.
She wants us to be nice. She it says in a hashtag, it's nice to be nice. She wants us to be nice.
Like
because
her
she's
boyfriend
scared.
is.
Because she's scared of what might happen to her and what I've done to her by bringing it. They portray themselves as victims after exploiting the town and the townsfolk.
I think they referred to my husband as a a bent ex-copper? What did they call him? A disgraced ex-copper. Be nice to be nice, isn't it? A racist and a disgraced ex-copper.
They referred to us in social media constantly, as using slang for excrement and feces and shit, and then saying, they shouldn't. Let's put an end to online abuse. I mean, you couldn't make this up.
Paul, I know you've had you've had a heart condition, but he mocked your breathing. Essentially, he mocked your disability. Yeah.
I had a tube on my lung and I half my lung out. Yeah. I was walking around Dovestalls. It was quite right. I was a bit out of breath, but I mean, I've got squishy shoulders, but thing is, if you're going to pontificate about abuse, practice what you preach. I've never sworn at him. I've got different political viewpoints from him. With Sean, I don't swear at him. I've never used foul language at him. I disagree with the direction he's taking this town in. I wouldn't do him any harm. I wouldn't want any harm to come to him. But I just don't agree with what he's doing for this town. But him turning round, and I do believe he is guilty of hate crime. What he did to one of his political opponents' daughter was out and out disgraceful, totally disgraceful. How can you write to somebody's employer and liken them to having viewpoints of a guy that's just murdered an MP, stabbed her 18 times and shot her in the street, and saying, that this my political opponent's daughter harbours views that the same as Thomas Maher, who's a complete despot. I mean, if her employers had took that letter seriously, that would have lost her a job. Not only would it have lost her a job, but in this town, it would have made her a target. If people would have believed it. Fortunately, people don't believe it, and they know her. And she was absolutely mortified by that.
Have you calmed down a little bit? Let me show you something else. Let me show you something else. So on top of that $500,000, yeah, my mate Chronic Oldham, £65,491, a further £65,491 paid to the Co-op Brand Limited, some specialist identity marketing company.
What?
Another 65.5 grand paid to a specialist marketing company.
Co-op Brand Limited.
And this is out of our ratepayers' money?
Yes, of course it all is. Yeah. Sarah, please tell us all about Proud of Oldham and Saddleworth. Please tell us about your candidates and what you're doing. Let us do it properly. Come on, Sarah. I want you to do it properly, and all yours.
I was just saying about the leaflets and everything that we use in local companies, because we need to bring that business back to the local area. So we've had all the leaflets done, and speaking to the company, absolutely amazing guys. They said we're actually run off our feet with leaflets for the election. And I said, oh, really? And, he said, you're the only company from Oldham, though. You're the only candidates from Oldham. The rest are from way outside the area, and yet Labour, Conservatives, Lib Dems, who are in Oldham, are all sending out of the borough, out of Oldham for their leaflets. Why not use the companies in Oldham to print their
We've got
leaflets.
a budget of £20 million a month, available money a month as a budget at Oldham Council. And presently, they're spending roughly £8 million a month outside the borough. And they've got the power to spend that. Now, Preston Council have got a strategy to split down these packages so that smaller companies...
He wouldn't know how to spell the word.
If you could spend £8 million a month more in Oldham, it would completely change the landscape of Oldham. That's £96 million a year that we've got available. It's currently going out of town. When I was campaigning the general election, I went into Featherstone Road, and I recognised some of the people in the room. I happened to be the only white person there, and I got treated very well. They made me tea and everything. They was very engaged with me, and I thank them very much for that. But I knew 3 people in the room who used to work at British Aerospace at Greengate, Cheriton, because we used to have a project there, a contract down there for maintenance. So I worked there for about 8 years on maintenance. I recognised 3 of them, and I said, "Where are you working now?" And they just shook their heads. They knew I knew them. They did work there. So that's 12,000 jobs we've lost in Oldham in one factory alone. I then put a post up asking people, "Can you please tell me names of businesses that have shut down in your area and moved out of town?" I was absolutely inundated. There were hundreds from all over the wards, in every ward. We're losing jobs left, right and centre. We spent £150,000 in 1 month on catering with a company from Preston and a company from Bristol. Why aren't we spending it with caterers from Oldham, or at least trying to engage with them and trying to split packages down like Preston Council are doing to great effect? Sarah and I have even discussed what we do different with trying to regenerate the town. I would personally, instead of blowing an absolute fortune on spindles, 68 million all in, how much would it cost to give the traders at Tommyfield Market rent and rates free for 5 years? What would it cost? It would cost a fraction of what they're going to spend on spindles. And if traders and market traders that could work there didn't have to pay rent and rates for 5 years, the town would be buzzing in a year.
Paul, I spent a part of my life living in the Northern Quarter in Manchester, and I had offices there and everything. I can't afford it there anymore. And the reason I moved there was because it was cheaper than Oldham. And look what became of it. Because it was so cheap, it attracted talent.
Yeah.
You know, and entrepreneurs and start-up businesses. And what is a dump? And I used to get burgled all the time. I remember 4 in the morning, I was regularly there because someone had tried to burgle the offices. And but the transformation is unbelievable. I lived in Ancoats for a stint. It was exactly the same. And it's simple. Make it affordable. Encourage talent to come in.
Yeah,
and transformation will happen. But he doesn't want that. The Labour Party and the Oldham Council don't want that, because they won't get any more council money. They want poverty, because poverty allows for all of the benefits to go into the civic centre so they can be all on the £1 million wages.
You know, we could regenerate this town, and I'd love to see this town buzzing again. Because the biggest asset our town has got is its people. Fantastic people in Oldham and Saddleworth, and you just got to give them a chance, and they'll deliver. You'd have a town centre there buzzing. If you give them rent and rates free for 5 years, that town centre would grow exponentially, and it would be a fraction of the risk, and I mean absolute fraction of the risk that Spindles is going to be. Spindles is doomed. Spindles is doomed without the market. If you got the market up and running, guess what? People who are going to the market would be parking in Spindles.
You cut through, won't you? Yeah.
And then the bigger businesses then I'd look at sort of an empty office or empty shop in Spindles, think, hang on a minute, there's 500 people walking past there every day going to Tommyfield Market. You'd soon get them rented out. Yeah. It's good. What Sean's plan is going to die. It's going to fail.
Because he's got no business acumen. You
cannot build any business from the top down. It can't be done. You've got to build every business from the bottom up. And what he's trying to do is build a business from the top down. It's going to catastrophically fail. And he's going to walk off into the sunset and just leave us in an ocean of debt. That is the problem. It's no wonder people look at links like Chronic Oldham and Oldham Eye to actually find out the real news, because they're not going to get it when you've got a body giving a local newspaper sums of that magnitude from ratepayers' money. It's wrong. The local newspaper should be impartial. There's no way it's going to be impartial if they're getting £1 million from the ratepayers. One of the writing councils at the moment lives in Delft.
Well, I mean, I don't know who that is, but I the writing councillor that I am most familiar with is Stephen Barrelgate Bashforth, the self-declared bootlegger. What do you make of that, Paul? This is a guy who's come out and said, you know, it's not a bribe. I took a barrel of beer on sale or return, but you know, but he doesn't have a license to sell alcohol, so he's admitting to being a bootlegger. And
I'd like to sale or return a curry, please.
When that story broke, Ali Akbar, who puts the most fabulous cartoon.
Yeah, with the barrel. Yeah.
Sat down, I took a sip of my tea, just clicked on Facebook and spat my tea all over.
But this is the level of this town. We've got a councillor. We've got a councillor, and Jim McMahon is openly supporting Barrelgate Bashforth. This is a councillor who's admitted to being a bootlegger. Because that's what it is. Trying to sell alcohol without a license makes you a bootlegger.
Or sale of return. But some of them cartoons that Ali Akbar could put up the...
What has happened in our town in the last 10, 20, 30 years to make them think that the current council are doing anything for them? Yet they still go out with their little blinkers on and think, oh, how wonderful they are, we must vote for them. Because 6 weeks before an election, they come out and point to some potholes and promise we'll clear them drains and never do, and pick up a bit of litter. I don't get it. Oh, yeah. We do this. And then they start. What makes me laugh is over the last few weeks, we've had a look, looking at the posts from especially the Conservatives, but some of the Labour and certainly some of the Lib Dems, and they're actually saying exactly what we've been saying for months, and they're saying it now. One tonight, fantastic one tonight from the Conservatives. We've been here doing this all year. No, you haven't. You've come out now, it's election time. We've been here all year. Crown of Oldham and Saddleworth have been here for 18 months.
The Conservatives abstained on the budget. They refused to vote. They refused to, Paul, they refused to vote against it.
What's the point in being a councillor? What is the point in being a councillor? If you're going to elect a councillor, you want someone who's going to fight tooth and nail for your ward. But not only that, they need to be a member of a party that will let them. Because it's no good voting for a party and that party turning around and voting for things that's not good for your ward. That's happened to us at Saddleworth, Westleys, Groton and Spring Head, where they're not allowed to vote for what's good for the ward. And this is happening all over Oldham. And as Sarah said, it's been going on now and it's getting increasingly worse. I mean, I'm not a politician. I work in the construction industry. Mm-hmm. The only reason I've got involved at all in local politics because I'm fed up with what's going on in our town. I love our town. I love the people in our town. I want it to be a better place for everybody who lives here. And it's going down the pan right now. We need to turn a corner. You've got the road to nowhere at the Princess Gate, Mumps, which is supposed to be the entrance into Oldham. There's tram lines and the bloody railings.
Paul, sorry.
The tram lines end.
Paul, it was a game changer. It was a game changer. Game changer. I don't know what game they were playing, mate, but it was a game changer.
I think, you hear a lot about the block Asian vote, the block vote, all the, the buying votes and all this lot. If you look at the amount of people who don't vote, every single time. It outweighs the block vote every single time.
But what? And you'll find this, Sarah. I know you're doing your sums on a piece of paper, but you'll find this. These people have been failed generation after generation, and to inspire, to get the hope, they have given up on hope, and to hope again and to be let down again will kill them. And that's why they don't vote. I've spent my life working in these places. They have given up on hope because they've been failed and failed and failed. And then any time anyone's come along, and this is before you guys came along, to try and, get them active and get them engaged, it was to exploit them. It was the far right. It was the extremists who came along and sought to exploit them. And then they're portrayed as racist when they're not racist, and these people never have been racist.
We had one lady who was involved in Save Our Valleys. I don't think she'd mind if I mentioned her name, Jane Barker. And she was accused of having far-right extremist views. I mean, Jane is an environmentalist. She's into when I've had conversations with her, I've known her for quite a while.
She's a PhD student archaeologist.
She's just into the environment and wildlife. When I've had conversations with her, all she talks about is wildlife conservation. She barely touches on. I don't even know who she votes for. I really don't.
She's one of the nicest ladies ever.
She's just a sweetheart. She's an absolute sweetheart. And she's been labelled as having the same political views as Thomas Maher.
It gets worse, Paul, because with Jane Barker, what gets worse is the police have, refused to follow her complaint up, even though, they, again, D.I. Blaine refused to do his job, and then she's been singled out by Neil Wilby with the assistance of Sean Fielding, and what's very clear with Jane is that the only crime she's committed is stood up for the community she lives in.
She is. She's just passionate. She wanted to save our valleys. She threw her heart and soul into it. She did a lot of investigatory work. I think she found out there was a tree preservation order, ancient woodland status on the valley, which Oldham Council just don't give two hoots about. They're not bothered. They'll build anyway. And the thing is, they've gone after Jane. And like I said, I know Jane. I don't even know who she votes for.
They've gone after Jane in the way they've gone after Moab, they've gone after Mark, they've gone after his daughter, because it's a warning. Don't mess with us. Don't ever question us, because they are tyrants. I don't use the word tyrant lightly. I use it with intent. These people who control our town are tyrants. So this is my thing, Paul. After spending my entire career working with people who are extremists beyond racist, people who want to murder people who are different, everyone goes on a journey, right? And just because even if someone was racist, it would not stop me from wanting to support them and broaden their mind and broaden their horizons and look at the issues they care about and try and frame them in a way where they can see that it is not racism, it is not hatred that will solve these issues. It's better political awareness and better political understanding. Well, and they hate us for that.
They hate us for that. Hero here is Muhammad Ali. You see a picture of him up there on the wall. He's been my hero all my life, and I've read books on him. I admire him. His daughter's a friend of mine on Facebook. I read a lot of his stuff. He's a brilliant guy, a very warm human being. He's one of the best people on the planet. And he said, very infamously, if you've got the same opinions when you're 50-year-old as you did when you were 20-year-old, you've wasted 30 years of your life.
You guys have come along and you're recruiting local people and you're saying all the right things. You mean all the right things. And why do you think it is that the leader of the council spends all his time criticising you than he does the Lib Dems or he does the Conservatives? Because he is scared. The Labour Party are scared that we are going to take our town back.
Mm-hmm. Of course they are.
Well, I'm just hoping that more candidates will come forward for the next election after this one. But we're looking for people who live in the area, who are passionate about the area.
Where does the money that the councillors have allocated for their wards, where does it go? Where is it going?
to the
I mean,
project.
It's not going to the wards, is it?
No, it's not going to the wards. We've just heard about one of the councillors in Saddleworth, Western Lees, who's been saving his pot for 2 years. Sorry, he's been saving it for 3 years, but he's only been in position 2 years. So how can he have been saving?
Sam Al Hamdani is also the president of the local Lib Dems. He's not just a councillor. He's the actual president of the local Lib Dems. And as the president of the local Lib Dems, I have repeatedly asked him, and he's repeatedly failed to answer a very simple question. When did you, and when did all of your other Lib Dem councillors personally find out that your mate, Rod Blythe, is a convicted child sex offender? Category A, 10 years, sex offenders register. Not one of them will answer.
But he's openly lying to the constituents by saying that he's saved for 3 years.
Sarah, are you shocked? Are you shocked?
No,
that is like, why are you?
I'm not shocked. I'm offended. I'm actually offended that he is sending that out to our neighbours and blatantly lying to people who can take. They will take that as read. He's saved for 3 years for this sign. He's only been in position for 2 years. How can he save for 3 years? He's saved his money, his councillor's money, for 3 years. 3.
He must have borrowed Sean Fielding's calculator and figured it out.
He must have done. But that is in a personal letter. That is in a personal letter to our neighbour on Rhodes Hill, because of the speeding issue on Rhodes Hill that Paul Shilton highlighted weeks before.
Something else that caught me eye as well, Roger. Since the employment of the two much needed, because I don't know how Oldham managed without them before, £55,000 plus press officers, because we really need press officers.
So Paul, let me just give you some more context to that. The communications department, because they hide their press officers in the communications department, and that way they don't have to declare how much they spend on press, so it's intentional. Yeah. It has not had any cuts in over a decade. In fact, it's increased in spend.
And we really need communication officers, don't we? We need loads of them. I mean, what we need to do is we need to cut back so that people are freezing to death in this street, that we've got a third of our children in poverty, put school meals up so that it's the poor straight in the pocket and they get hammered the worst. And then let's take on some communication officers, because our town really needs communication officers, doesn't it? I'll promise you one thing, that if Proud of Oldham and Saddleworth ever take control of this council, all the communication officers will need a new job elsewhere, because that money will be redirected on services, on things that are needed for the wards and for the people. We don't need any communication officers. If we've got 60 councillors, which personally I think is too many.
It's 20 too many. It's 20 too many.
20 too many at least. If we've got 60 councillors, if they can't communicate with the public, they shouldn't be councillors.
Sarah, you guys are nice. I'm not nice. I'm not nice like that. I don't care what Zoe said. In fact, I'll put another post up that Zoe said. No, let me put something else up that Zoe said. Sam might be a really nice guy, but Sam refuses to answer a simple question about the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children in our town, Zoe. Nowhere is that acceptable, Zoe. Your mate, if he's your mate, knows what went on. Rod Blythe is a convicted sex offender. And I'm angry because I can't stand people like this who come along, oh, he's such a nice guy. What? Oh, he's such a nice guy, but he turned his back whilst children have been groomed and gang raped in this town. Where was his objection to Sean Fielding's motion not to refer this matter to the Home Office? I don't remember him speaking out. Why did Sam stand up and clap and applaud Arood Shah's declaration of loyalty to Dale Cregan's getaway driver? And Zoe, what's this other one? Why dish the police? Because the police are bent, Zoe. Police, in that article that was released this week, lied to a 15-year-old child, and said the CPS had not took on the case when they'd not put it to the CPS, had refused to interview her rapist, let alone charge him. Come on. This is unacceptable. Maggie Oliver exposed. Maggie Oliver exposed. Maggie Oliver exposed them with her 97 paedophiles who were left to walk free that the police knew about.
80,000 records they've lost in a year, just 4,500 recently. Plus they've blown 27 million on a computer system that doesn't work. Demoralise the police, but the police. And 4 senior ex-police officers, very senior ex-police officers, are now writing open letters condemning what's going on at Greater Manchester Police. You're quite right, there's a lot of good police officers, but they're not being allowed to do the job.
Oh, no. And we've been very clear, Paul. This is not about decent police officers. We all are friends, but this is about the institution of the police.
Correct.
And decent police officers are leaving in their droves, are demoralised because slimy gits like D.I. Blaine refuse to do their jobs, and they will get promoted. They'll get took care of by the politicians that run the police force because they've helped protect bent, corrupt politicians, and they've helped protect and hide and cover up the attempt to rig an election in our town involving the council. And I'll say this in open because it's the truth. The evidence has been given to them. He has refused to interview people, Paul. How can you refuse to interview people?
Well, I've read Maggie Oliver's report. I mean, obviously, I'm conscious of the time now, but I mean, I'm looking at the report here where it reads like, and this is sort of, you know, this has been printed. It's out of Greater Manchester News. You're not making this up. I mean, you've got here former Chief Constable Mike Todd, charismatic leader of the force, was found dead near the summit of Snowdon in North Wales, where he'd been sending distressing text messages. An inquiry turned an open verdict on West Midland Police concluded that Greater Manchester Police was not at risk despite his reputation as a Lothario. The inquiry interviewed 39 women. This is in regards to the Chief Constable.
Yeah.
Our dead Chief Constable, unfortunately.
Charismatic.
Lothario. 39 women. That's Chief Constable. What message is that sending out to the rest of the police force?
What message is this sending out, Paul? What message is this sending out? Where were the 809 members until we were shouting and screaming about it? 809 members of child sex grooming gangs identified. Well,
when you listen to that poor girl, the Victoria Agaquela, 15-year-old, injected with heroin, she was let down by a man of 50 years old. They did nothing for her, and she's died. The police let her down. The police let her down. I read the note that she wrote. I burst into tears when I read that note. This is the Greater Manchester Police. They're under special measures. Our Home Office is saying what's going on.
The only way we're going to get out of this mess, and I know you guys, hopefully you'll get some seats, but it's not going to be enough straight away, and it's a long battle. But the only way we're going to get to where we're going to get is the Home Office need to do what they're doing in Liverpool.
Mm-hmm.
It's this. Look at this. The government is poised to take over City of Liverpool after corruption claims. Everything that's happened in Liverpool has happened 10 times and worse in Oldham. We have evidenced it. We have evidenced, everything from heroin dealers linked to the council, to dodgy sale of buildings, cover-up of child sex abuse, attempt to rig elections involving the council, bribery, corruption, police complicity, all of it's there in this town.
Roger, I'd invite anybody who questions the complicity of the police to just simply Google Operation Augusta and see what the conclusions of that were. It reads like a police train crash. Operation Augusta. Yeah. Get that Googled and read it for yourself. And it exposes bare what they've been doing continually doing and continue to do. And they're now under special measures. And it's getting worse. Maggie Oliver, in her report, 25 years as a senior police officer, in a report in January 2020, she asked for senior members of the police to be prosecuted. Now, this is a woman, a lady, who spent 25 years in a very senior role in Greater Manchester Police, openly calling them out to be arrested and charged. And if you want to know for yourself, do a bit of research. Just Google Operation Augusta. And it's all laid bare what they did and what they didn't do. And how many paedophiles they let go, who carried on to go out and rape young girls. They knew about it. And they printed it. It's not a secret.
Here's another Labour. This is one of those Labour Party bum lickers. What facts have you got? You wouldn't believe the facts if I shoved them down your throat, Zoe Pennington. You wouldn't believe them if I shoved them down your throat. Children have been groomed and gang raped in this town repeatedly. What facts have you got? What facts have you got?
80,000 have been lost. That's a fact. Another 4,500 have been lost. That's another fact. And is another fact is a rapist in Oldham who tried to wrestle a woman to the ground and rape her was fined £213 because he might lose his job. That's a fact. 15-year-old girl who was raped, had DNA swabs taken from her, humiliated. They didn't even go around and interview a rapist. That's a fact. How many facts do you want?
Yeah, disgraceful. And just to wrap up on this, I keep saying it every week, and I'll keep saying it again every week. Failsworth School, grooming and child abuse at Failsworth School. Paul, what do you make of it? I've said it again and again and again. What's your thoughts on it? Paul, because I've gone out on a limb, right? Like I have in the past, because I've got the evidence. I've shared the evidence. Children were groomed and abused at Failsworth School. They were locked in classrooms, Paul, and abused.
One of the problems I've been having were, like you, Roger, from time to time, I get forwarded quite harrowing details from victims, and some of these victims are now grown up. They're grown women, and they've got families, and they don't want to go through the experiences that they had as children. They were quite willing to sort of share information of what happened to them, but most all of them I've spoken to, so no, not most of them, all of them have said that they don't trust Greater Manchester Police. They don't trust Andy Burnham. They don't trust Sean Fielding, who incidentally is referred to everything on social media as barefaced lies.
To carry on, Paul, this is the man who, in the week his council sent out letters to victims of CSE that they had on their own records, asking them to come forward and give evidence, he had a headline on the front page of the Oldham Cron calling victims and their families liars for making it up.
I would invite people who are watching this programme to Google Judge Peter Ross. Judge Peter Ross. Judge Peter Ross referred to the grooming gangs as the House of Horrors, and he had a backlog of 37,000 cases, and he'd had enough. So when you're getting people coming on saying, where's the evidence? It's out there. You just have to look for it. And if you're blinkering, you're not looking for it, these people will carry on being raped.
Yeah.
And they can't. And what's going on at the moment? There's this vigil now in London with a poor girl, Sarah Everard, who was brutally murdered, lost her life, and we've got vigils now in support of her. What about the support of our local girls?
Working class kids don't matter, Paul. Working class white girls in the hierarchy of what matters, as I've come to find, working class white girls are somewhere near the bottom, and the dog. In fact, I would say that your dog matters more. What someone would do to a dog would matter more than what someone would do to a working class white girl.
And remember this, when the BBC got in touch with Jim McMahon, it was the Asian community that gave him the information. He's even ignoring the Asian community.
We don't want this, Paul. We don't want this on us. We want the police to go and arrest these people. We want the cartels took out. You've seen what's going on in Cldrs at this moment, and we've whipped it up. You know, you can see that. You know, we've got, so I use the term whipped it up. It's wrong. We've given the people in Cldrs some courage, Paul.
I think it's great. I think it's great that people are, I mean, I read a lot of the posts. People aren't waking up. So they're being made fools of. And the Asian community don't want this. I know. I meet Muslim people every day in my life. I get on fine with them. I've got an issue with them. They don't want these people in their communities. And yet they've come together. They've reported it to the BBC. The BBC sent an email to Jim McMahon. He's buried. And if you want some evidence, whoever's been asking for evidence, just Google Judge Peter Ross. He referred to grooming gangs as the House of Horrors. 37,000 cases that weren't lost is a backlog. That's how bad it is.
Paul, it's a disgrace. I cry regularly when I read the accounts I receive and stuff. You know, I read something there last week. Maggie Oliver had put it up from one of the poor kids and she talked about thousands of Pakistani men, thousands, Paul, not 10, thousands. And I believe her. We believe her. And then there's there's the thing of, what do you say? You know, kids were groomed outside school gates, Paul. Outside school gates in our town. They were groomed and picked up. The stuff I released last week that I got from an informant who works in one of these places where these children receive therapy, for want of a better term. Paul, the way out, they've got to go and find other girls to share the workload. So instead of being raped 30 times a night, they're going to get raped 15 times a night.
The only way that this is going to ever be resolved is you need somebody like Maggie Oliver leading the investigation and get a team around her. And she will stop it. But the thing is, you've got to have political will to want to stop it. And I doubt highly, as does Judge Peter Ross, that there is a political will to stop it.
They know where the evidence will lead. Remember, is it Newsman and Ridgway said we will go wherever the evidence leads us? And they've all gone very quiet. Yeah.
And with Dr. Mark Peel, you know, he with much fanfare, they announced Dr. Mark Peel was going to do the renowned Dr. Mark Peel. The renowned Dr. Mark Peel, and he said, I will follow the evidence to wherever or whoever it takes me to. A month later, he resigned. So where did that evidence take him?
Sarah, I keep going back to it because it's where I started, love. Sorry, so you'll have to excuse me. You know, my entire life is spent working with kids, and I find it's horrific in my own town what's going on. You're proud of Oldham policy is straightforward, isn't it? Refer the matter to the government, public inquiry, independent inquiry, Home Office led, wherever it leads.
Support Brian Hoban in what he's saying. You know, he's one lone voice in OMBC, and you know, we need to get more people in there to help with them votes. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So 1 or 2 more voices, and then next year a few more voices, all to back up what Brian Hoban's saying. You know, you've got Failsworth Independents. I absolutely pray that they get in. You know, we support them 100%. They need the candidates in to support Brian. And
here's another witness. Every week, someone new comes along who basically evidences the grooming and rape of our kids. Mm-hmm. You saw that last week. I don't set any of this up. I don't even know who Salan is. I remember young girls being picked up in cars outside of Counthill School in 1995.
Didn't Connor Green go to Counthill School?
Yeah.
Has he ever come out and said what he saw? If he saw anything? Did he see anything?
Failsworth School, the governors included Sean Fielding. The one of the guys involved is Sean Fielding's mate. Sean Fielding has been pictured out drinking with Martin Judd.
This 15-year-old girl, and this is Roger, 15-year-old girl, immediately after her ordeal, she was taken by her family to St Mary's Sexual Assault Referral Centre in Manchester, where she underwent what she describes as a distressing and intimate examination in which DNA swabs were taken. But a legal team representing her in a bid to claim compensation have been told that the forensic evidence was lost.
The police have also, they failed to interview the guy she claimed raped her. How can you fail to interview? How can you fail to arrest? And they wanted to arrest me and you, Paul, for things we wrote that the politicians agreed with.
I couldn't believe it. I got called in and was cross-examined in the police station.
And they're refusing to interview.
So they interviewed me. I mean, okay, they turned around, they interviewed me. I told them what I knew. Free to go, no charges. But I got interviewed. Look what happened to Debbie.
Yeah.
How many police officers turned up to see her? My goodness. I mean, they completely bombarded her. 3 police cars outside her house. 2 policemen in her house. One of them stood over her, warning her, threatening her. Gary Tarbuck got threatened. Gary Tarbuck went and complained about the trees being chopped down, and they threatened him. He said these trees, you're supposed to give 21 days notice. They threatened him with a £10,000 fine.
They are the stormtroopers. Stormtroopers for a corrupt council. At the beck and call of corrupt politicians.
That is why, Gary, I put that picture up. Because it emphasises we're only doing as we were told. And unfortunately, while they're doing as they're told, it's who's telling them.
We're not anti-police.
If we get a good chief constable, we'll have a good police force. But we need a good chief constable who doesn't have to kowtow to politicians.
Paul, I know we've been on and it's 10:30. Sorry, and I know, but the town needs cleaning up, Paul. You can see what's gone on, and it's corrupt. It's at every level. It's corrupt.
The thing is, Roger, at least we're trying, and we're going to put some candidates up. We're going to give people another option. If you vote for any of the 3 main parties, it's going to get the same. At least you've got an option now to vote for a person whose sole ambition and aspirations is to stick up for the ward. And that's never happened before, and it's happening. You've got a chance of it now. Get out there and vote for Pride of Oldham and Saddleworth, and it's going to improve if you do.
Paul, and that's what I say. They try and shut me down, but I'm a Democrat. Ultimately, I'm a Democrat, because what I say to people is, if you want to see better in the town around you, vote to make it better. Go and vote. Exactly. The majority of my townsfolk do not vote.
Time and time again, what have we got to do to change this? And I get asked a lot, and it's frustrating. And my answer is every time, the only way you can change it is vote them out. That's the only way. It is the only way. And I say again to everybody out there who lives in their ward, who cares about the ward, is passionate about the ward, we don't care what race, creed, colour, ethnicity, sexuality you are. If you're passionate about your ward, we'll back you up and we'll want you to stand for your ward. And there's no whip. So you are free to do what you think is best for your ward. And that's this town hasn't got now. It's got a whip. That's the problem.
The people of this town are taking our town back from the corrupt council, the corrupt council officers, the corrupt politicians, the heroin dealers who hang off the arms of politicians. And as we now find, we're taking our town back from a police force that is found to be in special measures. Greater Manchester Police Force is in special measures, and a detective inspector, Kenny Blaine, who describes himself as the gatekeeper. I'm not describing him as a gatekeeper. He describes himself as a gatekeeper whose inaction has put the lives of people in this town at risk. And that is as simple as that. Paul, over to you. You've got, you can have the last few words, Paul, before we wrap up.
Well, the last few words, this is an extract from an email sent from a BBC reporter to Jim McMAHON. Dear Jim McMAHON, as you are aware, I was passed some information about private clubs in Oldham and suspicions about child sex exploitation taking place inside them. As a reasonable journalist, I made inquiries both yourself and Greater Manchester Police. Despite contacts within the Asian community confirming to me that they were concerned about young people in these clubs, the request of Greater Manchester Police and Oldham Council, we agreed not to broadcast anything after you, Jim McMahon, told us activities in these clubs were limited as to what he knew. He did not want to be making public, and you were concerned about the tensions in the town ahead of Lee Rigby's funeral. My question is, if Jim McMahon knew limited information, what was it limited to? 1 rape, 5 rapes, 10 rapes, 30 rapes? And why has it never been mentioned since? Now, bear in mind, this is the Asian community that's telling the BBC there's a problem with grooming. These are the Asians in our community who are saying there's bad people amongst us. Will you please help? Now, they've been abandoned as well. And I know a lot of these Asians, and there's some good people amongst us, many, many good people. And they're being let down also. So think, when people are trying to divide this community, they are frightened of us getting together. Because when we do get together, that's when we'll take the town back.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.